Hey, this is Todd. I want to talk to you today a little bit about buying a condo versus a townhouse versus a house. And I've got my own opinions on this. It is what it is. I'm just going to walk through the details with you on some of these and what I feel is probably if my daughter was out shopping, what I would tell her. All right. So first of all, something to consider is the homeowners association dues are kind of the pros and cons of buying it. There is an HOA, and in general, all we need to realize is the HOA's total job, what they're responsible for, is to maintain or increase the values of the property by upholding community standards, ensuring the neighborhood is well maintained, and pay attention to it. So you can look at that, and when you're paying your dues, this is what you're paying them for. Now, they're also going to enforce the rules. I'm going to move this. This is bothering me a little bit. Not enough to start over, but let's just get this out of the way a little bit, my little talking head. All right. So they have and enforces the CC&Rs, which is the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. They want to maintain the property value, as I mentioned, and they're going to cover things like lawn and landscape care, exterior home colors or modifications, parking regulations, noise restrictions, pet rules, things along those lines, right? In addition to it, they're going to maintain common areas, clubhouse, sidewalks, snow removal in the winter, things along those lanes, and landscaping in those areas. So they've got community managers, and what they're doing there is they're organizing and overseeing different events. Some of them do those and are pretty good about it in creating a community, and some of them aren't. And they mediate disputes between the neighbors. People are calling on the HOA for whatever reasons, okay? Financial management's a big deal. They collect the dues. They use funds for maintenance and repairs and future improvements, and they also manage a reserve fund, working capital for unexpected expenses. Now, on the enforcement of legal requirements, what's important is that they're ensuring the compliance with the local building codes and safety regulations, making sure the properties are built correctly. So all of these things are good when you think about it. You've got an overwatch that's taking care of everything on your behalf, and they're going to enforce fines and for rules and violations. If somebody in your neighborhood is being disruptive, we'll call it, it gives you an opportunity to have a third party that can help you with it versus dealing with it on your own. So, those are things that they do in that regard. Now, non-warrantable is a term, if you're out shopping, that comes into play mainly on a condominium, well, and only on a condominium. And what that means is the condo does not meet the eligibility requirements to get a mortgage on it, a traditional mortgage. And because of that, they are a riskier investment by lenders, which is something you need to be aware of. So what happens often at times is a property becomes non-warrantable after somebody buys it. And what that means then is you wipe out a large percentage of the eligible buyers. You're on your own now in order to find cash buyers. And if everybody had to pay cash, the value and price of homes would drop dramatically, of course. So you want to be careful getting yourself into a situation like that. I selected this photo because it just reminded me of some of the high rises where they were non-warrantable. You couldn't get financing on it. What if you bought this property right here and your HOA goes bankrupt? Well, what that means is those common areas, including things like elevators, don't work. Air conditioning doesn't work. So the building in Miami this happened to, and people had to take the stairs 15 flights up and down with their groceries. Can you imagine if you left your phone in your car because you were schlepping 4 bags of groceries all the way up to your 18th floor condo building, and you get up there and realize you got to go back down and get your phone? So, I mean, good for your cardio, but not necessarily great as far as the marketability of your property, right? So some of the key factors that make a property non-warrantable, I'm going to go over here this time. And this is important for you to know. Realtors should know this. Any good realtor that is going to earn their income off of helping you buy a house should be able to know if a property is warrantable and what the risks are. So keep that in mind when you're talking to your real estate agent. Investor ownership is a big one. and I'm going to have all of this written down, almost like a checklist that you can go through. It'll be in the bottom in the text, but so if more than half of the units are owned by a single investor, Fannie and Freddie aren't going to lend money on it. Now you think, well, we're not going back to that big high rise, but there are condo complexes that are 8 units. And it is possible that somebody could own 5 of them and they are renting them all. Or it could be a 3 or 4 unit building and somebody owns 2 of them. And so now you've got that ownership issue. That does come up. The other one is owner occupancy. If less than half of the units are used as primary residences, that's a problem. That means most of the people in the building are tenants. That means they're not their properties. They're not that concerned about the overall well-being and maintenance of those properties. And it's a risk for the building. So if you're looking at properties and you're curious to know, all right, how many of the units are actually owner occupied, that's a big deal for you if you're going to be an owner and occupy that property. So once again, when I look at some of these things and people are like, well, that sucks. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's good that you've got somebody who is thinking more fiscally minded as an investment than a home buyer may be thinking emotionally on, boy, this is really a nice looking place, but it isn't a good investment, right? So in addition to the occupancy rate, there's also commercial use. Now, this is pretty cool, but you can't have more than 1/3 of the building square footage designed for non-residents. So there's a lot of cool places where the bottom floor is retail, right? So you've got your coffee shop, which is awesome. You've got your dry cleaners, you've got a bar, neighborhood bar, things along those lines that are all set up and designated for non-residential use, which really makes for an appealing property. But you got to make sure that it caps out at about 1/3. Or Fannie and Freddie are now thinking, all right, most of the building is dedicated for commercial. What comes into play are things like off-street parking, stuff like that. If there's all retail spaces, where do people park? If there isn't allocated parking lots designated for the residences, right? Things along those lines that you need to be careful with. Pending litigation is a big one, and it isn't. So it depends on what the active legal disputes are. But the reason I want to know this is if the litigation could lead to any financial instability, then you have a problem. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail in a second regarding HOA delinquencies and things. But the reality is the property has to remain solvent, because here's an example. You get into a legal dispute and there's pending litigation and it's drawing all the reserves out of the HOA and a water main breaks. And it's the responsibility of the HOA to fix it. So you guys who own properties in the community have water, and you drained all the money paying for a legal dispute, and now you can't get water to the property. What does that do to the livability? What does that do to the values, right? Things along those lines. Moving on to delinquent HOA dues. So this is easy. It's in the budget that your realtor is going to request and review to make sure you're buying a solid investment. The lender's also going to need to do this if you're going to get money from Fannie or Freddie. But regardless, is there more than 15% of the units behind on their HOA dues? And is it 30 days or 60 days? The guidelines, I've got a link to them here. But the reality is it does signal financial trouble with the association. So when you think about why are association dues late, is it because people are irritated because the HOA isn't doing a good job of maintaining and enhancing the value of the property? Is it because of financial mismanagement? Is it because of vacancies and people aren't living there anymore in financial duress and hardship? We can go back to the HOAs are delinquent. The HOA goes into bankruptcy. They stop paying the utilities and taking care of general maintenance. And you're back to schlepping your groceries up the flights of stairs because the elevator's been turned off. Things along those lines that could come up with the HOA dues, right? Incomplete development, if the project isn't fully completed, including common areas, that's a problem. And there's some phasing and some other things that we've done actually to help in this situation. But the reality is because the unsold units are still owned by a developer and they're not for sale, there is financial instability. What if the developer goes under? And same thing back to one guy owns the majority of the units. Well, what if something happens and they just stop paying and the majority of the units are now in delinquency? So these are all of those risks, and they're set up because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac don't want to make a bad financial decision, but they also don't want you as the home, and neither do you. You don't want to make a bad financial decision. So as frustrating as this could be, because it's a really nice looking place on the outside, that doesn't mean the inside is financially stable, which, I mean, I've mentioned that before. So short-term rentals has become a bigger and bigger thing. Now, this can affect townhouses and single families. There are beautiful beach resort communities where the city is putting laws on, actually lots of them, where short-term rentals can become an issue. So if the condo allows them, it can create turnover, financial instability. It also can create a lot more disruption. So think about it. If you live in a mountain town and you like to ski, and you go up and ski every few days, and usually pop out on like a Wednesday, maybe, and take a ski day. You don't deal with the weekends because it's chaos. Well, if it's a short-term rental, they're going every single day. So there's a lot more traffic, a lot more in and out, a lot more people up and down, and a lot more duress on a property and on the quality of the neighborhood. If you're in a beach community and you've got, same thing. They're going every single day. They're renting the jet skis. They're doing the things and creating a busier atmosphere, and that will diminish the value of the property. Insurance issues is pretty much the biggest thing that's been coming up lately. And honestly, it's the first one that I ask. So, hey, I'm going to look at a condo. Have you gotten the HOA docs? Yes. What is the maximum deductible for property insurance? If it's more than 5%, you're not going to get financing. Now, here is what's been happening. HOA has gone to their insurance and said this is getting insurmountable. We've seen insurance on condominiums. There was one up in Vail, Colorado. It was $40,000. Their insurance premium jumped to $200,000, and it wasn't a big condo building. It was like 60 units. So, in order to cut those costs, they go, okay, well, how do I get my insurance down? One of the ways you get your insurance down, bump up the deductible, right? So when they increase their deductible, what they did is they sabotage their increasing or enhancing and improving the value of the property, because you just wiped out Fannie and Freddie as financing options. So to save money on your insurance premium, you now converted your entire units to cash. And I've literally had HOA presidents tell me, I don't care, I'm not selling. And they just don't care. They plan on being in it for the next however many, 10 years or so, and they're just trying to keep their costs down. So even though they're in a position to represent the community, they're looking out for their best interests in mind, and now anyone else who wants to buy or sell a property has lost significant value because you can't get traditional financing. That is a really big one. And I've got the links here, but I'll give them to you as well. The financial instability, I think I covered a little bit when I talked to HOA dues and insurance. But bottom line is the HOA does need to have sufficient reserves of at least 10% of its annual dues in a fund for building maintenance and emergencies. Things like the water pipe breaks, things like you got to put in a new sprinkler system, things like the fence around the exterior of the property is dilapidated, needs to be replaced. These are things that are not they're not normal everyday maintenance, right? They're unique. And so what they do is a couple of different things. They have to have a 10% in the budget, but that may not be enough. Then they put a special assessment on each homeowner stating, look, we need a new roof. It's not covered by insurance, and it's going to be $15,000 per individual in order to fix this for all of us. So these types of things come up that obviously, if you're looking at it, you're going to go, okay, well, does this work for me in this community now? Because they have these instabilities, and the lenders aren't going to let you make a bad decision, but these are the reasons why, right? Restrictions on ownership, once again, this can be good, bad, or indifferent, but they prevent transfer of ownership without board approval, and it may disqualify the condo. 55 and over communities, for example. you can't sell to somebody who has a big dog. In some condo developments, they don't want dogs that were 25 pounds and things along those lines. So because of that, it could mean it's a non-warrantable property that isn't allowed to be financed. Now, some other non-conforming amenities that don't come up all that often, but I've seen them. I've seen the helipad. Not a big deal, honestly. That's a piece of asphalt that's poured in a circle in the middle of a field somewhere. But also marinas, trying to think of other things that could come up that, are just non-standard amenities. And once again, I've got the guidelines here on what ineligible properties there are. I look at it this way, and here's how I explain it. If you buy a condominium, it's like you're buying a dresser. And in the dresser, you don't own it. You literally only own one drawer, but the entire dresser is managed and dictated by lots of other people outside of you. You only have ownership of your one little piece. The rest of it, you're dependent upon others and the decisions that they make, good, bad, or indifferent. So I look at it this way, going, that's a lot of risk and exposure that you have in this property that you're putting in the hands of a lot of other people on a six-figure investment. So it's a pretty big deal. When you think about a townhouse versus a condo, a townhouse, you own the ground all the way to the sky. Now you're attached. You don't own the building by itself. There's multiple units here, but you literally own everything. So they will have the HOA, a lot of the other things that we talked about, the goods and the bads of all of those regulations still will apply, but it will always be warrantable. You can always get financing on it because it's a lot that you own, lot and block, all the way from the ground all the way up. So in that regard, if you're looking at two properties side by side, one of them is a condo, the other one is a townhouse, buy the townhouse. It's a much safer investment. Lastly, and without going into a lot of detail, when you own a house, obviously you own the house and you own all the land around it. Now, houses can also be in an HOA that is responsible, or their sole purpose is to maintain and enhance the value of the property and the neighborhood. And they can do movies in the park, and they can make sure that you don't have an abandoned vehicle in your driveway. They can do lots of things, just like the condo, just like the HOA. However, you're responsible for the whole thing. Even in this scenario here, when we're going back to the townhouse, when the roof goes out, you're not responsible for just your piece. As a community, you got to come together and put a new roof on the whole property. Same thing with that condo building, right? This guy owns the same percentage of this as anyone else. And so it's important that they are working together on it. I have the choice in my house to make a lot of those decisions on my own, including the maintenance, right? So on HOA, I'm paying HOA dues. Somebody cuts the grass. If I have a single family house and I don't want to cut the grass, I can pay a guy. And it's just like paying the HOA dues, but I get to dictate the maintenance guy and the schedule and what he does and what my budget is. So when I look at it, you have the most freedom on a single family home to make your decisions with your investment and the least exposure to other people's opinions on how you should manage your property. Secondly, would be the townhouse. And then lastly would be the condo. Condo is going to have the most risk, and it's going to have the most exposure to outside forces dictating your piece of real estate. So I hope some of that was helpful. If you've got questions, you can ping me, hit me up on any of the contact links that we've got included on the webpage. But I just kind of wanted to walk through this in detail so you could absorb the differences, the value of an HOA versus the pitfalls of an HOA, and how I would rank single family home, townhouse, then condominium, in that order when I'm shopping for a house. All right, thanks so much.